everyone. Nice to see all your faces. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see that okay? Thumbs up. I like it. I like those kind of thumbs up. It's easy to see. All right, folks, for those of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Juliete Palenshus. I am the engagement lead for Blue Zones Project Umpqua. And I've had the pleasure of facilitating purpose workshops for the last 2.5 years around our community for different organizations and even outside of our community as well. Some other communities that maybe didn't have someone that was trained in doing purpose workshops, I've been able to go down there and provide these. And I really derive a lot of benefit from them personally. We as a team kind of had to elect a few folks to be our local purpose workshop facilitators, and I was really attracted to that. I think because purpose is a really important part of my life, but it's also one of those things that I feel like is sort of a lifelong endeavor in terms of really figuring out how to articulate your unique purpose and coming to understand the health benefits that come along with that and just the of additional vibrancy that it brings into a person's life. It's something that I wanted to explore. So before we really formally get into our curriculum here, I want to make sure a few things that everyone has our purpose workshop workbook here and that you are comfortable following along. I want to start with a question, and you are welcome to take yourself off mute because I would love to have some real responses to this question. I want to ask you all simply what gets you up in the morning? What got you up this morning? What gets you up typically in the morning? And feel free to shout out responses.
My alarm.
Who is that, Heather?
It's Dana. My alarm.
Oh, okay.
I wish it was something more inspiring, but it's usually my alarm.
Yeah, that's a classic one.
It's my alarm too, Dana.
So even though I saw Heather's face pop up, but yeah, you guys are on the same page with that one. What else? Anyone else want to share?
I think my to-do list. I go to bed with things on my head and I wake up with things in my head, so it's my to-do list.
I can relate to that, getting things done, right? Checking more boxes feels good, but it's also sort of anxiety producing, right? What was that, Carrie?
Wake me up in the morning.
The cat outside like 6 something in the morning, like meow meow.
Okay, a pet.
So
Nice. Well, I heard someone else say
diesel truck.
big diesel truck. Oh gosh, that would drive me nuts.
I have a neighbor that goes to work at 5 in the morning. So
Oh.
and it is hot in this house. So it's kind of like right now I'm like it is really hot, and then I have to keep my window open, and it's like the noise and I cannot sleep like that. I'm like, oh my God.
That's tough. You know, I've thought about that too, like in the summer when you really want to keep your window open, but there's noise outside. That is no fun. So I can sympathize with that. Anyone else want to share what gets you up in the morning?
Wake me up in the morning.
Coffee. I heard someone else. Was that you, Trey? What did you say?
I said my dogs wake me up in the morning.
Dogs? Do they do it nicely? Come lick your face or jump in the bed? Okay. So this is great. You know, the best ones I've heard are like, you know, a partner brings them coffee or food or something really sweet like that, all the way down to, right, the diesel truck or, you know, the kids or the alarm clock. Lots of these really, I guess, practical illustrations of how our lives are led, right? These are the real things that get us up in the morning. But throughout this purpose workshop, I really want to take it one step further, go a little deeper, and think about the deeper meaning in terms of what our purpose is and how that gets us up in the morning every single day, and how that can really truly be the thing that we tune into, to tap into, and kind of unleash greater potential and greater energy. Now, if you struggled to make the connection between what gets you up in the morning and your real sense of purpose, that's pretty typical, actually. The CDC has actually studied this, and only about 20% of our population in this country can articulate or feel that they have a clear sense of purpose. So we're hoping to broaden that figure a little bit right here locally through these kind of purpose workshops, and make it possible for us to be able to really respond to that, for us to be able to really identify what that looks like for us. And of course, this is just the beginning, right? This is a 2-hour workshop, and I look forward to going through that exploration process with you today. Maybe some of you have already had the chance to invest some time on what your unique purpose is, and this will just be another step along the path for you, along that journey. And for others, I imagine it might be the first time, right? We don't invest a lot of time, we don't spend a lot of time in our culture really thinking about what our purpose is. So this is kind of first stop, but not the end of the journey, I hope. I don't have the expectation for all of you that you're going to leave this meeting today and say, yep, I know my purpose, let's go. But it's the beginning of a conversation. I'll talk with you about some other resources and activities that we have that would allow you to continue the conversation if you're interested, and I hope that you will be. John did a great job reviewing the ground rules for us here in a virtual setting. I want to add a little bit to that list. I really hope that today we have the ability to share openly and, even share maybe some things that are personal for us. Of course, this is a purpose workshop for an organization. You all work together. And so I'm going to leave it up to you to make the best decision and use your judgment on what you want to share and what you don't. But I really want to invite everyone to just be to make this as safe and open and comfortable environment as possible for everyone. And of course, knowing some of those good guidelines about stepping up, stepping down, making sure that everyone has a chance to speak. But I always appreciate those that are really participative too, because especially in this setting, sometimes it can be difficult to be the first one to step up and share. So you're invited to do that. We will be using the breakout session feature a couple of times during the workshop. So we'll break you into smaller groups where you'll have the chance to share about some specific parts of the workshop with just a few other people. We hope that'll invite you to maybe share a little more freely and openly and give everyone a chance to share the floor. And I always say it's Vegas rules at purpose workshops, right? What we share here stays here within this group. And just to really try to help cultivate that respectful space, always remembering that we're all so different, and that's what makes this such a beautiful process. Some people have gone through some kinds of things, other people have gone through other kinds of things, and maybe those are things that we will one day experience or maybe not. So let's just kind of keep that top of mind throughout the workshop today. A little bit about what we're going to be doing. I'm going to start the first kind of 20 minutes or so just sharing a little bit about why we do purpose workshops, the importance of purpose workshops. Some of the experts, I guess let me go here. Yep. Going to go into defining what purpose means from our perspective, hear what some of the experts have to say about it, some of the research-based best practices around purpose, and then we'll do some exploration activities. This is where we're going to ask you to get a little more hands-on. It's going to get a little bit more individual. We're going to be thinking about things that are just specific to you. And then the ultimate goal today is that everyone will leave with at least a draft of a personal purpose statement. So let's explore a little bit about why we do these purpose workshops here. We've learned, and hopefully you all are tuned into this a little bit, so this is not the first time you've heard it. You're all working in sort of the education field and are probably conscious of some of these changes that are happening in our world and our community, but really truly that people today are hungering for a sense of meaning, that they feel a yearning to discover and do what matters. And I know this is often, pointed out in the millennial generation. People are not content just, taking a job and staying in that same job for 40 years to get the paycheck. They're really wanting to see how they can make a difference in the world and discover who they are and contribute their unique passions, gifts, and values. Um, you know, I think meaning or purpose can be the antidote to the busyness and emptiness that we are seeing across the country. We all know, and we're probably all aware that isolation and loneliness have skyrocketed. But we know that people that have and are aware of a strong sense of purpose are more resilient, and they are able to weather life's storms better. So what greater time than here now in the midst of a metaphorical life storm than to do a little introspection and thinking about what that looks like for us and how we can then tap into some of those strengths inwardly and improve our life outwardly and in turn. So if you're opening up your workbook, I'm going to start just kind of filling in some of these blanks here on page 2. We define purpose as the motivating force behind everything we do, whether you're aware of it or not. We say that purpose is the inward intent that drives your outward action. Purpose is the inward intent that drives your outward action. So when what we're thinking, feeling, and doing are all misaligned, we feel unhappy, we feel lonely, we feel empty, we lack direction. Can some of you relate to that? Give me a amen. No, I'm just kidding. Give me a thumbs up or a hands up if you think that could be true. Another way to think about it is that lacking in alignment, thank you, Holly, in your head, heart, and feet is what causes some of that disconnect, right? That inner upset. So understanding our gifts, our purpose, all of those things that brings us back into alignment. So when our head, heart, and feet are all acting together, then we feel a sense of greater harmony, and we don't feel like we're being kind of torn in so many different directions, unsure of what we're doing here, unsure of why we are here. And I have a really beautiful testimony that I'll share a little bit later, but just a little teaser about a young high schooler who took this workshop, and she described it in a way I've never heard before, but it's so beautiful. She said that she felt like, and it's I'll just warn you, it's pretty sad actually. She said that she felt like she was, prior to learning what her purpose in life, she felt like she was misplaced air that wasn't being used, air that wasn't being breathed, just kind of vacant air hanging out there in space. And that's very poetically said. It's a sad state of being for any of us to experience, and perhaps some of you here today have, to some extent or some degree or another, or even just a short period of time here and there, felt like that, questioned why you're here, what you're doing here, are you of value? And I truly believe that in order for us to have the thriving community that we want to see, to have children grow into a place of ownership in our communities, that we all need to see how we're contributing and how we are of value and how we can all be a part of something bigger and greater than ourselves. So when you have a clear sense of purpose, we know that you're operating in alignment. You tap into a powerful source that is correlated with your full potential. What's better than wanting to completely realize our full potential that every single one of you here present has today, and everyone in our community, and how that could be a big impact on our neighbors, our families, and our communities. Someone said that it's tapping into the deepest springs of energy within you. So to me, that's pretty exciting. That's pretty intriguing to kind of see, like, wow, what would life look like if we were to, truly be able to dive into that. Now, there was some research done by Richard Leiter, who is the co-author of this workshop. He is the author of a book called The Power of Purpose that I really recommend for folks that are interested in taking a deeper dive into this subject. He did some research where he explored a few questions with people that are in their 80s across the United States. And you know, the responses to these three questions were quite powerful. I know for me, you know, coming into now like my 30s, wanting to really learn from my elders and see, you know, what mistakes do I maybe not have to make? Because I want to avoid as much suffering as possible. How can I learn from my elders the wisdom that they can share with me? So I was really, really, you know, wanting to tune in to some of the responses of these questions. So what he asked them if you had to do your life over, what would you do differently? That's a pretty big one, right? I don't think we have anyone here on our that's in their 80s, right? Because I would love to hear from you before I give the responses, what you would say to that question. But I think we're all too young quite yet to be able to fully answer that. But what would you do differently? And maybe we can even, you know, think about that in our own lives now. But their answers centered around three key themes. And here's what they said. They said that they would have been more reflective. First thing they said, they would have been more reflective. And they kind of expanded on that by saying they would have hit the pause button more often in their lives, and they would have that would have allowed them to consistently make the most of the time they had. So reflective, hitting that pause button for the sake of making the most of the time that we all have here. The second theme that they found, that Dr. Leiter found, was that they all would have said that they would have been more courageous in one way or another. But courageous in what direction? They said they would have taken more risks, but specifically to pursue their dreams and their life priorities. So more courageous in pursuing their dreams and their life priorities. Not necessarily at the casino or skydiving or something like that, but really being brave about, you know, first we got to know what those life priorities are and then being brave to pursue those. Finally, the last theme that they found, that Dr. Leiter found in his research with folks in their 80s, was that they would have found their purpose sooner. Okay, so we can all congratulate ourselves. We are working on that. But they would have found their purpose sooner because they realized that living their lives, as we like to say, on purpose, living your life on purpose, would have given them the focus and the direction to ensure that they would have no regrets at their end of their lives. I mean, what a beautiful place to be in, right? Where you could say, I have no regrets. So they felt that if they were to explore, identify, and realize their purpose and live every day on purpose, they would have no regrets at their end of their lives. So we can adopt and learn some of these lessons from these folks and really integrate them into our lives right now, right? We don't have to wait until we're in the 80s to be reflecting and thinking about what we could have done differently. And today we are really, you know, it's a purpose workshop. We're going to be really honing in specifically on what that looks like for each of us individually. So we want to just first identify, what does that look like in a person? We've probably all met people in our lives that just had a certain something about them, but who would you recognize in your life? Who do you think specifically you could say has a strong sense of purpose or lives that on purpose life? Who can you identify in your life? And I'm really asking you this. I would like to hear a few examples from some of you. Do you have people in your life that you would say, yes, they clearly know their purpose? And if so, what are the qualities and characteristics that you see in that person that lets you know that? What are they exuding? What are these, you know, what do they look like when they're out in the world, maybe living their purpose? How did you recognize that in them? So I'm opening it up to you all now. You can take yourself up off mute if you'd like to share. Tell me about a few folks in your lives that you know are on purpose people, and what are those qualities that you see in them? All right, Trey. Thank you for starting us off. You're muted still, though. Okay, there you go.
Okay. It doesn't unmute in the little box in the right side of the screen. You have to do it in the bottom left only. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that
here.
tip.
Anyway, honestly, my wife. I think, sometimes I feel like I don't have it in me to get certain things done in a day or whatever. And I mean, she's been through a lot, and her ability to stay focused on what she needs to get done. She's an RN, and her ability to get up day after day and to be able to help people out the way she does is inspiring for me on a daily basis. And I think, by far that's probably my number one at this point.
That's so awesome, Trey, to have someone that you're so close to right there, in your relationship, in your household, that you can see, as an example on a daily basis. And I'll just say, one of the things that I heard you say was focus. And it also sounds like there's an element of service there, her being an RN and, like you said, getting up every day and what she can do for folks. So it looks like Corey's joining us. Good. Anyone else want to share? That was a great one. Who else do we know in our lives, in our community? Sherry, yes. Are you able to unmute yourself? There you are.
There we go. A lady from my church came to mind. She's been through a lot of things in her life. Had a lot of times when she was wandering, and not making good choices and stuff. But she seems to have reached a point in her life now where she is, she knows what she should be doing with her life, and she just kind of shares that to, not what her purpose is, but the things that she does to meet that purpose or to pursue it. She's open about it and other people and openly invites them to join her. She's very active. She doesn't mind going outside of what I would think a comfort zone. But, like she'll go up and do something at the Capitol, in Salem, or she'll get in front of a bunch of people and speak, or she'll approach somebody she doesn't know one-on-one. And, when she walks in to the room, she's got that confidence about herself, she holds herself up straight and has a smile on her face. And if you're her within her line of fire, you can tell because she got her eyes on you and she makes a beeline for you. So I just, she seems like that to me.
That's very cool, Sherry. Undeterred, confident. Sounds like she has a sense of clarity about what her priorities are, and she's inclusive about that. She's vocal about that. So it's evident. And it also sounds like she's energized, like she does have that sense of energy because she knows what gets her up every morning, perhaps. Nice. Okay, who else? Who else do we know in our families, in our workplaces, in our communities, at church, in our neighborhoods? Anyone else that we can think of that's an on-purpose person? Yeah, go ahead. I didn't catch your name earlier, though.
Sorry, I can't. I was just trying to figure out how to change it, but my name's Jeannie. So.
Jeannie?
Jeannie.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I have a personal friend he's a professional presenter, and his whole thing is working with communities to help people learn how to tell stories and share stories. So that's kind of his profession. But what's really cool about him is that he does that like 24/7. If he comes over to your house for dinner, he's asking you to tell him a story, and he's telling you a story.
Oh, wow. So
that's
he really,
what's really cool about him.
Sounds like he's really tuned into like what his gift is, what his purpose is, and he loves doing it. He just always wants to do it. He knows how he's contributing. That's really cool. Thank you. Did anyone else want to share? Maybe one last one before we go on. Yeah, I see Jay Jackson waving.
Julie.
Julie.
My husband is just always happy with what he has and what he's doing.
I love that. Thank you. That's like, it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing, right? It can just be contentment. Maybe it's even contentment with simplicity. And I think that's really beautiful. So there's some patterns there. Are you guys starting to pick up on maybe some of those qualities? And if you didn't share, maybe you're still thinking about someone that you're aware of that exudes some of these qualities, that just exhibits that on purpose life. So maybe they're focused, really committed to something. Maybe they just have this sense of energy or clarity about who they are and what they have to contribute. They know their priorities, they're determined, they're committed. You know, and the more we can start to recognize these in the people around us, the more we can start to get clear on what that looks like, what that means, and you know, how to start identifying some of those things in ourselves. So why, you know, again, why is this important? I think we're starting to see the beauty that this how this looks in people. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the research that's out there and the importance of why we're focusing on purpose workshops, why we do purpose workshops as part of the Blue Zones Project community well-being model. So maybe some of you, I don't know if we have some well-read people on this call. Has anyone heard of this book or read this book, Man's Search for Meaning, by Dr. Viktor Frankl? Familiar with it? Read it? No? I highly recommend this book. It's been translated to many different languages. It's not a long read. You can see it's a pretty small book, but it's written by Dr. Frankl, and he is a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor. Now, when I say that, I imagine that people think like, oh, this is going to be too heavy and too hard. Well, it does have some of those elements because, you know, it's the Holocaust. He has a really nice way of sharing about the power of meaning and purpose in a person's life, and kind of sparing us some of that really heavy, gruesome details of, you know, this horrific event that we have in our world history. You know, Dr. Frankl. Oops, let me move our slides along. I'm so engaged by all of you that I'm forgetting to move my slides here, so I'm a little behind here. So we talked about our on-purpose people. We talked about some of our elders. Dr. Viktor Frankl said that people with a sense of purpose face the worst crises and most difficult change with a sense of choice. Now, if you just heard any old person say this, you'd be like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But this is a person that survived the Holocaust. He was at the Auschwitz concentration camp. And he's saying that we still have a sense of choice even when we're in the worst crises and most difficult circumstances. So that means a lot to me because it's like, wow, if he can say that, then, you know, the troubles that suddenly seem very minor that I experience in my life, you know, I can still approach them with that that sense of choice. And he says that when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. This always kind of makes me smile because I don't know about you all, but that is the last thing that occurs to me. I'm like, change you, change her, change him, change the guy with the diesel truck out the window, right? I'm going to change everything before I'm going to start thinking about, wait a second, this might be about me. So I think that the really beautiful way to ask this question to ourselves when we notice that we're starting to do this is, why is this happening? Instead of why is this happening to me, it's why is this happening for me? Maybe there is some growth in here that I can experience. maybe there's something that I can actually get out of this and change and become a better person, because that's truly what I want, but it's just not the first thing that comes to mind when I face challenges in my life. So I think that this book is really powerful. He talks literally about how a person might survive a situation, and like as in between life and death, when they know they have still a sense of purpose, when they still have the ability to contribute in a circumstance versus not. And that's very clearly illustrated in his book about the Holocaust and the concentration camps, where he still practiced as a psychiatrist. He was still a support to the folks that were around him there in that circumstance. Blue Zones Project, some of you are probably very familiar. It's based on places around the world where people are living the longest, healthiest lives. And the Power 9 is that cross-cultural distillation of well-being best practices that they found in these 5 longevity hotspots. 5 places, totally different geographies, different genes, different climates, but all doing some very similar things. Now, that's inspiring, because that means we can all do these things too, right here in Roseburg, Oregon, or in Douglas County, or wherever you're at right now, and we can contribute to our well-being and ultimately our longevity by adopting these practices. And there's really something for everyone. We don't have to be an expert at all 9 of these behaviors, and I'll encourage you just to take a quick look if you're unfamiliar, and there'll be lots of opportunities to learn more about the Power 9. We do a lot of different activities related to each one of these behaviors. But today we are zooming into that second tier of the pyramid that we call right outlook, and specifically on purpose. And what the National Geographic researchers found that went around to try to explore these places and reverse engineer longevity is that people with a sense of purpose live up to 7 years longer. That means they know what's getting them up in the morning, right? It's not about the alarm clock or the dog or the coffee, but it's really about who we are and our unique combination of gifts, passions, and values, and knowing every day that we are needed to contribute that to our communities, our kids, our families, our neighbors, our church, wherever you're going to target your purpose, that's really needed. And you can imagine the difference between a person that wakes up every morning and feels useless and unvalued, and a person that knows they have something that they've got to do in this world before they die and before they go to bed that night. Who's going to take better care of themselves? Who's going to value themselves more? Who's going to feed themselves well? Who's going to take that micro break to go on a walk because they know I need to keep this thing healthy so I can keep doing this today, tomorrow, and for the next X number of years. So that is what the researchers showed. And if you go up to a centenarian in one of these blue zones and you say, what gets you up in the morning? They're able to answer that question with a real powerful, deep response, something that they've really thought about, that they know. And again, like Julie illustrated, doesn't have to be something really grandiose. It can be something simple. In fact, there's an example from one of the demographers where they went up to an elderly woman and they asked her what her sense of purpose is, and she said it was her great, great, great grandchild and being able to spend time with her. And she said it was like leaping into heaven to be able to spend time with this child. And that's so beautiful, right? It's not, she's not trying to, change policy or, run the government or anything like that. But she knows that she's contributing and she's having an impact, and that's how she can share. So in Okinawa, they have a term for purpose. They call it the ikigai. In Costa Rica, they call it the plan de vida. And that both roughly translates to what gets us up in the morning, and that's kind of how they look at that term. So Dan Buettner in some of the Blue Zones books, he cites some of this research, and it's really powerful, and these are fun and easy reads. So if you have not already, this is a book that you can get for free through the Ford Family Foundation. They will mail it to you. So if you haven't taken advantage of that service yet, I encourage you to do so, because it's just a really sweet read. Or if, like me, you like to listen to your books while washing dishes or making dinner, you can definitely get the audiobook on some different platforms. So encourage you to do that. Now, moving on just to a little bit, the last bit of research that we want to share with you is something called the MetLife Mature Market Institute study. It's from a book based on some of Dr. Leiter's research, from a book called Repacking Your Bags. And he talks about the proof of connection between purpose and happiness, health and contentment. And a lot of us, when we think about what living the good life means, if we were to ask, I'll just target myself here. If we were to ask like 8-year-old Juliette, I definitely spent some significant amount of my childhood drawing mansions with my brother and like envisioning being wealthy and like thinking that was really what was going to bring us happiness. We're kind of poor, so maybe that's why. That something different from what we're experiencing right now. But I oftentimes, when you talk to younger audiences, it's still that that fame and fortune idea of what's going to make us happy in life. And I think as we grow older, I hope we all start to realize how that may not be so true. And I know for me personally, I had the great benefit of learning that early, by spending time with people that had a lot of money and seeing that nope, that wasn't it. And spending having a really hoity-toity corporate job with a beautiful office and realizing nope, that's not it either. And but coming to kind of like, I guess by process of elimination, wondering what is it then, and really wanting to learn that, so I don't waste a bunch of time, because I wanted to be happy. I want to be happy. So this MetLife study actually was able to apply measurement to meaning, and researchers found that meaning was able to trump money. So meaning over money. Now, of course, when you think about the good life, a lot of people would speak in terms of being healthy, having time to do what's important to them, and financial freedom as a part of that. But it includes living on purpose and focusing on essential things and the vision of the future that they want to enjoy. So that's kind of similar to what we talked about earlier, the responses from the folks in their 80s. Once we know what our priorities are, let's go after those, let's focus on those, and let's be courageous and endeavoring to attain those. But that requires us kind of staying on purpose and knowing what our purpose is. So far we've talked about aligning our feelings, our actions, and our thoughts, our head, heart, and feet. We talked about some of the on-purpose traits that we see in other people. And we have heard from some experts on why we're even spending time on doing something like this, why we're spending time on focusing on purpose, and why we do these workshops out in the community. So we want to do a little bit of exploration now personally to understand how people's life experience goes through some repeated phases, and how those triggering events often serve as a method of uncovering one's purpose. So this is called the life spiral. And the idea behind this life spiral is that each one of the circles in this spiral represents a cycle through these 5 phases. So when you see that word plateau, in terms of you know, maybe a phase that you go through in life, and I invite you to unmute yourself, what do you think of? I mean, and even when you just think of geographically, what does that plateau look like? What do you think that looks like in your life? Anyone? Welcome to just throw out. Yes, Sherry.
I think in terms of, it might be like when I know I have a steady income coming in, my house isn't needing any huge repairs.
Mm-hmm.
The bills are all paid. My kids are all safe. My husband's happy. I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's shots.
Aww.
Nothing's
sounds
killed
nice.
my chickens. So
maybe you can
just,
take a breath.
right. So maybe at a time when you don't have any huge things hanging over you that need to be addressed and that maybe are out of the ordinary, or
Yeah.
you know, have to
I
be
like
done.
that. So it sounds safe. It sounds maybe like you can just relax a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit more predictable than
Yeah.
usual. That's
And
great,
no
Sherry.
challenges coming up, I guess.
No big challenges right at that moment. Yeah. Anyone want to add anything else to that? Is a plateau all positive?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean,
what's the other side of that?
Something that makes you feel like you're stuck in something that you don't necessarily enjoy.
Right. Yeah. Maybe you're stuck. Maybe you're bored. You know, if you stay in that plateau long enough, again, right, it's this flat surface. Maybe you're kind of ready for something to change. Now, I don't know. That doesn't happen to me very often. Usually I'm like, oh, okay, take a breath. But theoretically, if you're living life on the plateau, yeah, Corey, you're right. It might feel like you're a little stuck and you're a little bored. Okay, so let's say we are, right? Let's say we got to this plateau, everything's good, everything's happy, predictable, day in, day out. Oh, maybe we start to feel a little bit stuck, maybe we're a little bit bored, and then triggering event. What might that look like? What are some examples of a triggering event that might come in and just flick you off that plateau?
Losing your job.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, that's very real right now for a lot of people. Maybe you're getting laid off. Maybe your hours got cut.
Serious illness, cancer.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's kind of big medical thing happening in your life. What else?
Financial issues like house repairs.
Yep, some big financial issue. Yep.
It can be positive too, like having a big trip coming up, you know, like last year my husband and I went to Australia and it knocked us off our plateau for quite some time just trying to plan for it.
Okay. Yeah, so it does, again, two sides. Doesn't have to be negative. What are some other positive examples of a triggering event?
Children.
Okay, new baby on the way, or you're adopting, or you just got custody of a new child. Lots of different ways that can happen. Yeah, new child in the house. What else?
New career.
Yeah, new job. That could come along with a lot of things. Maybe you have to move for the new job. Maybe you got promoted. Yeah. What else? Can these kind of things happen at any point in life? Could you imagine a triggering event for a teenager all the way up to, you know, someone that's more in their elder years? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are on our plateau. A triggering event just came to us. Maybe it's positive, maybe it's negative. What immediately happens? Let's say, for example, well, how about this? This is kind of fun. So let's say You know, we're living life, we're going to work. All of a sudden, we're sheltering in place. What is the very first initial reaction to that? Maybe you guys can think back. What happens right after that?
You start thinking of scenarios, different, how it's all trickling. Yeah, how does that happen? How does this happen?
Yeah. What does that even mean? You know, what is this going to look like? How is this right? Is this wrong? How am I supposed to think about this? Yeah. What are other reactions or phases that you might experience? And I'm here, you know, kind of describing this limbo phase. You're still processing. What is that a comfortable place to be in?
No, it's just a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, a lot of unknown.
Mm-hmm.
We don't quite have all the answers yet. We just got the information. Okay, so we're in limbo. Next, now is the time to get some answers. Let's take stock. So what would that look like? Maybe in the situation that I just used as an example, or maybe something else. What do you think taking stock would look like after a triggering event and after you get through that limbo phase?
Taking it deeper, like what do I believe is right or wrong in certain situations, or what do I feel, you know, carrying scenarios down the road a ways, like which direction do I feel is going to be best for everyone involved?
Mm-hmm. Okay, starting to think about what's going to have the best outcome in the long run. Okay, what else? What other things might you take stock of?
I think trying to make sure everyone that you're responsible for is safe, and maybe forming some sort of a list in your mind of what you need to do, what you need to have.
Okay.
Starting to put a plan in place.
Yeah, Sherry, forming a list, making that kind of the root of a plan, accounting for your loved ones. Yeah. Anything else?
Finding people to help.
Okay. Yeah, what I think of in terms of resources. What resources do we have? My neighbor is really good at this. Maybe I can solicit some help from that. Oh, my kid's good at this, and my partner is good at this, or, you know, maybe it's financially. How much money do I have in the bank for this big house repair, right, Holly, that you were suggesting, or you know, this trip to Australia, like, ooh, can we afford this? Oh, maybe we can afford this if we just do it a little bit like this. Okay, so we've taken stock, we've accounted for X, Y, and Z, we've kind of assessed our strengths. You know, maybe at this point we start to think about how our purpose plays in. Now, that might be more relevant in some cases than others. It might be like, hey, should I take this job? Do I want this promotion? Is this the direction I want to go? Or I was just laid off. You know what? This is an opportunity for me to say, what's my purpose anyways? Was that it? Or do I want to pivot and maybe go in a different direction? Provides that opportunity, right? So that's when really the time where we can use what we learn from our purpose, maybe from the purpose workshop today, to bring, if you can kind of picture a line being drawn right down that spiral, kind of bringing it all back to center and bringing it back to purpose. What would taking charge look like after you went through that whole taking stock process?
Trying to put your plan into place, gathering your resources, making connections, scheduling things.
Mm-hmm. Could summarize it by maybe just saying you're going to do it. Now it's time to do it, right? Just do it. So this is really a big picture of how you experience your life from birth to death. Now, it may not always be in this order, but the thing I really like about this is, we all find ourselves at different places in this life spiral at different times of life. And when a devastating triggering event hits, it can be helpful to recall this life spiral and remember there's kind of a little bit of a sequence to how this works. I'm not going to be stuck in the triggering event forever. I might be in limbo right now, and that's why it feels so uncomfortable. I don't really know how to perceive this. I don't know what to do next. But I can move into taking stock, and maybe that'll help me start to account for things, start to make my lists, right? And eventually I will be in my take charge place, and eventually I'll probably be back in my plateau place, right? It all happens, kind of in that sequence. And it doesn't mean it always has to be in this order. It doesn't have to take a certain amount of time. I remember when we were doing one of these workshops for a high schooler, she's like, I think I go through like 3 of these a day. But some of them, you might be doing that. And then meanwhile, you have one kind of situation that spans years, maybe. Maybe it really takes time for you to go through that whole process with a certain really difficult or big, triggering event. So we are going to experiment with our first breakout group. So John, I am going to invite you to facilitate that process. But before we do, what we're going to have you do in your breakout groups, and we're going to randomly put you into, I'm not sure how many groups. Let's see, we have 12 people on the call. So maybe let's do 13. Let's do 3 groups. And in your groups, we want you to share about your last triggering event. And, if it's too personal or too emotionally charged, you're welcome to pick. If the last one is not something that you want to feel comfortable sharing, that's okay. Maybe for all of us, it's coronavirus, or maybe there's other things that are going on. But we want you to share your last triggering event or a triggering event. But more importantly than all the details of the event, right, are where are you at in this life spiral right now? And what have you learned from it? Is there something that you can actually say, I actually derived some wisdom from this experience? So let's spend more time on the second 2 questions than the first question, just enough to do that triggering event. But because it's our first breakout group, before we do any of that, I want you all in the group to just kind of go around and share maybe what your favorite sheltering in place activity has been. Your name. I don't know if you all know each other well, but maybe you can just say your name, your favorite shelter in place event, and then go into answering these questions. And we will give you, you're going to have 4 people in your group. So let's give you 12 minutes for the breakout, and then you'll have 3 minutes each. Does that sound good? And we'll kind of give you some prompts throughout the 12 minutes to remind you about timing and remind you about what you're doing in those breakout groups. For those of you that couldn't hear me well, that if one person from each group wouldn't mind sharing one of your triggering events and where you're at now and what you've learned.
I'll be the guinea pig.
Thank you, Trey.
It's a good one because it actually has to do a little bit with blue zones too. And
I
nice. Was telling everybody about probably 2 years ago, I guess it was. My dad had a stroke. Went back to Oklahoma, and anyway, whenever I came back, I'd gone to work with the ESD, and then we were introduced to blue zones. It was, the plant-based diet, eating healthier, and so I felt like I had a better motivation, and I didn't want to end up in the same predicament that he was at the age that he had his issue. And so I was probably more, my motivation was more accelerated at that point because of that, and so out of a bad thing comes a good thing. So, And it's actually caused a huge lifestyle change for me, because it's not that I'm fully vegetarian, I will admit that, but I do eat a lot more vegetables. I mean, it's a huge difference, and I feel different.
Wonderful.
But positive for sure.
That's really great, Trey. Well, it's all about the plant slant, as we like to call it. So bringing more of those plants onto your plate. But very cool that you know, that life experience could bring something positive. And actually, I was just thinking about how often it does take a wake-up call, unfortunately, right? Often it does take a wake-up call before we kind of get disciplined enough to ask those deeper questions, to really kind of see what kind of wisdom can emerge from some of those more difficult situations. And I think that's really where the taking stock can come into play. Really thinking about, again, like, what can I get out of this? What can I learn from this? And how can we make things better after this triggering event? So that's really a really cool example, Trey. Thank you. Anyone from the other groups want to share?
I can go.
Yeah.
So the example that I used was work related. A big one when Terry, my coworker of 12 years, retired last June.
Yeah, I know Terry.
And you know, it kind of threw a wrench in the gears. We worked well together for a long time, and you know, in the print shop, it's just me and one other guy, you know,
right.
And when that one other guy leaves, it's like, what do I do now, you know? But we hired a great replacement for Terry. It was, you know, big shoes to fill, but Eric's been working out great so far, and he brings a different skill set to the print shop, so that's been nice. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. I was going to say, now you're stuck with Eric, but it sounds like that's working out okay. Okay, good. That's cool. Yeah. And I was thinking, you know, back to kind of like what Trey was saying, that sometimes we see things as like a catastrophe, and we can, I like the little play on words, as you guys can see, but taking it from a catastrophe to a catalyst, and really trying to like reconfigure our minds. And, you know, maybe in your situation, Corey, it's really just kind of being open-minded to like, maybe something good can come out of it. You know, maybe it's not going to be terrible. Maybe someone else will be, you know, different, but good in another way. And I know sometimes change can be scary, and we just assume like it's gonna be terrible. You know? For sure. Cool. Thank you, Corey. What about the last group? Anyone want to share from that last group?
I shared that our son lost his job, and we had his family move in with us last August, which was kind of a, you know, one of those triggering events.
Yeah.
But it worked out okay, but we just had to take a day at a time and be kind to each other. And talking about good food, my daughter-in-law cooked for us, which was wonderful.
Oh, extra bonus there.
It was a real good bonus.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but he got a job right before this all happened, and they moved to Eugene. So, but now we're kind of at that plateau, kind of like breathing and going, okay, well, we did that. Wow, we did that.
Wow, you survived. Yeah.
And still have relationship with them. So
that's
grateful.
Worth noting. Yeah, that is worth noting. We didn't just survive, we still like each other. Okay, after living together. That's big. Yes. Awesome. That's a great example. Thank you for sharing. What was your name?
I'm Barb.
Barb. Okay. Thank you, Barb. Okay, wonderful. Well, we all survived that first breakout session. We're going to do one more a little bit later on. Let's move in to talking about this little purpose formula. If you have any math geniuses in the house, you might appreciate this slide, but if you're not, don't worry, it's not intimidating at all. So really, we see that purpose can be well formed when we identify what our unique gifts are, what our passions are and what our values are. And the assumption with these workshops is that we all have a purpose, right? That's not even in question. It's really, I think what you're going to see is the challenge will be once we go through our activity of going through those calling cards, it's going to be narrowing down what your gifts are. So, but just to kind of go into some of the definitions of what these things mean, and if you're following along on the workbook, we're on page 4. We're going to kind of define what we mean by some of these different things. So our gifts are the aptitudes that we're born with. It's those things that you can't necessarily remember learning. They're probably so natural to you that you may not even know about them. You might not even know that you have them. And in fact, sometimes it's really nice to have someone that really knows you well to help you go through this activity. That may not be the case today, but you can always kind of run it by someone that you're really close with to say, like, did I get this right? Are these my gifts? Because it really can be so innate and so natural to you that it's never occurred to you that it's your gift.
Hey,
But yep.
Can I interrupt? Can you share your screen with the slide on it?
Oh, did it not share? Stop sharing? Okay.
It might, yeah, when we came back from the meeting, you might need to put it back.
Thank you.
Up. Yeah.
Is it there?
Yep, now it is.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. So there's that formula. And so yeah, again on gifts, they come effortless to you. You feel compelled to give them away. And it's a natural, there's a natural connection to your gifts and the most satisfying aspects of your work. So one thing that can be helpful is for you to think about, like, when is the last time that you just completely absorbed yourself in something that was meaningful to you? You maybe lost track of time, and it's something that you really enjoy doing. That might be a helpful way. Like, what are one of the ways that you like to serve in your workplace, or maybe it's for your family, or maybe it's for your friends. I think back to the gentleman that loves to storytell, and he loves to invite people to do storytelling, and you can't stop him from doing it because that's his gift. So it's like something that it comes really naturally to you. It's not something that you aspire to be good at. It's already there. So that's kind of what your gifts are, right? Your strengths. And then passions are just those things that you care deeply enough about that you're compelled to take action. Something that really lights your fire, something that you think is worth fighting for, a subject that maybe you like to talk about. I know sometimes I think it's funny, like when, we know people are really big on a certain topic, and it's like, don't get them started on that topic because they're just going to go on and on. So maybe there's something like that for you, something that makes you really want to take action in your life, something that you think is worth doing in the world. When you are connected to your gifts and your passion, we know that you have a clear reason to get up in the morning because you need to go back and kind of like fight that good fight. And again, it doesn't have to be big or lofty, but something that you just feel really passionate about. And then our values, we see our values as an expression of your deepest concern about that you choose to act on. Values are not ideals, they're more actionable. So your values underpin your life choices, where you live, where you work, your relationships, how you spend your time and money. You can think about them as like the guardrails for every decision that you make, whether you realize it or not. They're based on your values or the facts of the situation, and even the facts that you choose to perceive are influenced by your values, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in an echo chamber because that is, that's where we want to be. Those are the things that we really believe in. So when you're involved in projects and working environments that are consistent with your core values, you feel energized and enthusiastic about what you're doing. So imagine like maybe being placed in a role where you're like, I just don't agree with where we're going with this. Then you're kind of outside of your values. And so we want to really kind of stay in that world so that we can feel passionate and energized. And then we'll be more effective, we'll do better work. So that's a kind of real simple definitions of those 3 elements that make up our purpose. And for the remainder of our time, we're going to be focusing more on the gift element. That's kind of the first step. Those are kind of seen as the seeds of purpose. And we know that when you're expressing your gifts that come naturally to you, you often feel that you're living your purpose, that you feel a sense of purpose. There's a beautiful quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes. He says, most people go to their graves with their music still inside of them. So it's like, what do I have that I'm not using? Maybe we have our gifts, but we haven't identified them. We haven't recognized them. And that means the rest of us are missing out on what those gifts are. So we often don't express our true gifts because we just don't have the platform or the understanding or the recognition of what those are. So we're going to do an activity here that's going to allow us to really kind of identify those by selecting from a list of gifts. Because I know for me, if someone were to say, Juliet, what are your gifts? I don't know. I don't know how to begin to formulate that. But if I see a list of options, then I can more easily pick from those. So when looking at this list of options, and some of you may have downloaded this list before, if not, there is going to be a slide with all of them listed. It might be a little overwhelming. There's 52. When we're in person, we use a deck of cards, and you can filter through the deck of cards with a yes pile and a no pile. And I would encourage you just to keep it really simple, yes or no. The slide is going to say you can have a maybe pile, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's hard enough to get down to 5, which is what we're going to encourage you to do, to get to your top 5 gifts by just doing the yes or no approach, than, to have 3 and then have to narrow it down further. So to help you narrow it down, again, the questions that we want you to ask yourself is, what do I love to do? How do I like to serve? What are you doing when you lose yourself in a task? So those are some of the prompts. And again, we're going to sort, 2 piles. Let's do 2 piles. Things that are just an automatic yes, this is my gift, and no, or I'm not sure. And then we're going to get it down to 5 cards and then pick our number 1 card. And we'll be writing those down on page 5 in the workbook. So we're going to look at 52 doing statements on the calling cards. And some of you, again, I think you may have had that downloaded or printed out. Otherwise, they're going to be here on the slide, narrowing it down to 5 and picking our number 1. So here they are. And I'm going to leave this up for about 10 minutes. Or actually, no. Yeah, let's do about 6 minutes. And I'll set a timer. And if we need a little bit more time, we can do that. But then that'll give us time to go through the purpose draft. So I'll give you 10 minutes just to look at this, or if you have it on your own, and you're again narrowing it down to 5 with your number 1 gift in your.
Okay.
Now this next slide associates each gift with what we call an environment, which is kind of a category that we'll review here shortly. We want to also, and this can be done on page 7, for each gift to list the letter associated with the environment. And actually you can write the full word because there's plenty of room there in that second column where it says environment. So each gift, you can look here on this slide and see which environment it's associated with, and go ahead and write that. Good. And hopefully, these maybe, on some cases it may be that they were obvious to you, and then on other cases it may be that there were some surprises, but in either scenario, hopefully it just helps you to get to know yourself a little bit better, and it can help in navigating the next phase of your life. Could be when you're searching for a job, or re-energizing yourself about your current job if you're experiencing burnout, or if you're thinking about your transition to retirement or choosing a volunteer opportunity. This is all going to be part of that taking stock part of that sequence. So just a good exercise to get to know yourself better. And again, that first part of that formula in finding what our ultimate purpose is. So let's review what some of these environments look like and what they mean. I'd like to hear if just by a show of hands, did anyone have all 5 of their gifts in the same environment? Okay. Did anyone have all of each one of their gifts in a different environment? You did, Marcela. Okay. So that's very unique, actually. Usually there's a few here, a few there, but you might see that you're maybe a little more one thing than others. And so I'm going to read to you what these environments stand for. So we have social, artistic, realistic, structured, investigative, and enterprising. So who are my more realistic people? Just do a little show of hands. Who are the people that fell more into that category? Anybody? Okay. Barbara, right? Okay, so Barbara was one. Let's hear about Barbara a little bit. Realistic people are doers. So realistic people prefer activities that are structured and ordered. They like working with objects, tools, machines, and animals. They like things that are quote unquote real, what you can touch through the 5 senses. And their motto is, let's roll up our sleeves and get it done. Does that sound right? Yeah, she says yes, that is right. Awesome, Barbara, we gotcha. Okay, where are my investigative people? Who's an investigative who had more cards in that area? Anybody? Not so much. Okay, I'll read it. Okay, a few, maybe Heather, maybe you had 1 or 2.
I had 1.
So we had 1. Okay, so these are our thinkers. It's funny because we don't really have any of those in this group. That's okay. No, just kidding. So we might have 1 thinker in this group. Thank you, Heather. These people prefer activities that involve in-depth observation and investigation of things. They are extremely curious, liking to analyze things and solve problems. Their motto is, let's figure this out. Does that sound right? Does that resonate a little bit? At least a part of you, Heather? Okay, cool. What about our artistic and creative people? Anyone? Dana, okay. A little bit, maybe Trey, Robin. Okay, cool. So our artistic people, our creatives, prefer environments that are unstructured and activities that call for creative thinking. They like to produce original work, and their motto is dream it and design it. So I always have to give a little sympathy out to our artistic people during the purpose workshop because it's fairly structured. So thank you for withstanding our workbook and our breakout groups. We'll have a little bit of an opportunity for you to be original here shortly. What about our social people? Who are social folks in the group? Barbara, okay. A little bit Marcela, Heather, okay. Little bit, Jeannie, okay. So our social people prefer environments that are participative. They are friendly and outgoing and like to work on activities that involve helping people and solving people problems. Their motto is, we'll do it together. Does that sound right? Okay, I see some head nods. Yes, I can definitely relate to that one. What about our enterprising people? Who are they? Identify yourselves. Okay, Marcela again. Anyone else? A little bit? Anyone? Okay. So our enterprising people are our persuaders and our influencers. They prefer activities that involve startup organizations or projects and like to focus on actions that produce results. Their motto, let's get going. Does that sound right? Okay, and where are our structured folks in the room? Okay, Dana and Corey and a little bit of Trey. Yes, okay. So structured people are organizers. They like environments that are well organized. They like to carry out tasks and are dependable and conscientious. Their motto is, you can count on me. These are reliable folks. Does that sound right? Thank you all. I'm glad we can count on you. And that's interesting. So Dana, you had both. You had the artistic and the structured, right?
I did.
Nice. So you're not completely tortured by all of them. That's really good to know. So we want to thank you. Just changed for me. Okay, so this is where our calling cards look, and you can see like Social's kind of on the opposite side of realistic, enterprising on the opposite side of investigative. Of course, we're all complex creatures, so we're not necessarily just one thing or the other, but it's something really good to keep in mind when you're thinking about maybe the literal physical environment where you want to work, or the kind of setting or the kind of culture that you want to work within. If I'm a super social person, probably don't want to stick me in a back office where I never see people all day. I'm going to be miserable and I'm not going to be effective, right? So really be thinking about this, because again, the more we know ourselves, the better we can, serve our communities, the better we can utilize our purpose and be the most, effective and happy, really, overall, and healthy, on that note too. So on page 7, we are going to think really big about what's possible. Okay, now we start to know we have our 5 gifts. We know kind of how and where we want to use those gifts. Now we're going to think big and pull out all the stops. No, money is no object, right? We are going to think about what we would most love to do with each one of these gifts. If the world was just completely our oyster, we have every opportunity at our fingertips. Resources are not limited. So we're going to take just a few minutes, and I want you to at least do the first one. The rest of them might need to be homework, but we'll start with just your number 1 gift. So we've got our first one filled out. Maybe you had time to do the next 2, and this is going to help us when we go into actually forming our purpose draft. So let's see, moving on to page 8, and I'm going to skip the purpose sounding board and come back to that here shortly. We're going to move on to purpose draft, and you see, for those of you that like organization and structure, there is a formula that you can follow along there on the bottom of page, or kind of toward the bottom of page 8, where it says my purpose draft. You can literally just list your gifts 2 through 5 in those first 2 lines, and then list your top gift where it says I am here too. And then for the benefit of, that's where or for whom you want to share this gift. So that's your chance to kind of really think about, who do you want to serve with this gift? Now, if you want to just free form it, maybe you're an artistic person, you can go all the way down there to the bottom and just free form, this is what my purpose is. And again, remember, this is just a draft. We're just starting to explore this topic. So if it's intimidating to you, like it would be to me, where I want to have it perfect, just let that go, and we'll draft it this time, and we'll refine it as time goes on. So give you just a few minutes. Okay, now I had planned to break you out, but we think we lost a few people, and so it's a pretty small group. So I want to invite you to share your purpose draft with all of us. Maybe just a few people that are willing to bravely share this purpose statement with us. And I really, this is our opportunity to really cheerlead each other, because this is a big deal, right? This is our life's purpose, at least the draft of it. So let's be a great audience and cheer on whoever's willing to do that. And then we'll circle back to that purpose sounding board and talk about some resources that we can utilize to continue this purpose exploration journey beyond today's workshop. Anybody want to start us off? Volunteer to be the first one to read their? Dana, all right. Go for it, Dana. Let's give her the floor.
So I free-formed mine.
Okay.
I said, my purpose is to create and organize meaningful spaces and events that bring others comfort, peace, and joy.
Wow. Yay, Dana. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Dana. That's awesome. Great. Who else? Who wants to share?
I just did the draft. That, I don't know if I was, my not following directions probably, but I said, with my gifts of creativity, writing, instructing people, seeing possibilities, helping others overcome obstacles, that I'm here to share ideas with others for the benefit of helping my community.
Wonderful, Jeannie. No, you were right on. That is definitely the way that you can do it. There's 2 options. You could do it that way, or you could free form it. So perfect. Wonderful. Thank you, Jeannie. Heather, were you volunteering?
Yes, I can volunteer. Now I'm done. Okay. With my gifts of putting things together, writing things, moving physically, building relationships, and growing things, I am here to put things together for the benefit of promoting possibilities to my community or for my community.
Awesome. Community-oriented people here. Wonderful, Heather. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Anyone else? This is your chance. Share your purpose with us and your colleagues here so they know.
I want to hear Corey's.
Oh,
oh, Corey, you've been called out.
I had trouble deciding my number 1 and number 2. And so I just chose one so we can move on to page 8.
Okay.
And so with my gifts of, and I just had the draft filled out, doing numbers, analyzing info, building things, and organizing things. I'm here to operate things for the benefit of opening up my own brew house.
Ooh, that's cool. There's a little bit of a plot twist there at the end. I didn't know what to expect. Awesome, Corey. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Good call, Heather. Heather knew there was something we needed to know there. Great. Anyone else before we move on want to share? Okay. Thank you all for participating. So let's go over a little bit of how we can continue this exploration and this journey to find our purpose. Now, normally you all are probably familiar with that concept of a MOI, these small groups that meet for 10 weeks to explore a healthy behavior. I know some of you have participated in walking MOIs and potluck MOIs. Normally at a purpose workshop, we would launch or give people the opportunity to launch a purpose MOI. We probably, if folks, let me back up. If folks are interested in doing that, let's definitely explore that together. You certainly can do that virtually, and we have a light curriculum. We have another little workbook that is just really nice to kind of prompt some good conversation that we could certainly get out to you all that are interested through the help of, Dana and Holly. But it's a little different, right? It would be conducted virtually at this point. We also always need a champion who's willing to kind of keep track of the group and the attendance and just convene folks. So if folks are interested, let's definitely explore that. That is a great way to continue purpose exploration. I have to say, that's probably where we get some of the greatest feedback, where people are really experiencing some deep insights about themselves and about the group that they're with. So it's very powerful opportunity if you're interested in doing that. So we'll give you a chance to express that here shortly. If you go over there onto let's go back to the purpose sounding board. I'm sorry. This is a strategy to keep yourselves accountable. So finding people in your life that are going to support you in living on purpose. Now, we learned earlier on in the workshop how important it is for our well-being. Remember, you can live 7 years longer if you live an on-purpose life. So it's important to have people that know you and love you that can support you in doing that along the way. And these are some suggestions of some different characters or personalities that you may want to find to make up your sounding board, or your own personal board of directors. So a committed listener is a person who listens deeply without judgment. Some of us might be lucky enough to have some of those kind of people in our lives already. A catalyst is a person who encourages us or challenges us to take risks. Role model is a person who inspires us by their own actions. And a thinking partner is a person who will engage in productive dialogue focused on next steps and spurring us to take action. So what roles do you already have in your life, and what roles are you missing? There on page 8, right above your purpose draft, you can jot down some names of folks, and we encourage you to actually reach out to them and say, hey, I took this purpose workshop. This is my purpose draft. Will you help me stay on track with this? Will you remind me that this is my purpose? When a triggering event comes about in my life, will you remind me to look for how my purpose will bring me back to center in this particular situation? And we actually encourage you to circle one name on that list and actually reach out to them in the next 24 hours. So it's a nice activity. Blue Zone's project also, one of the Power 9 well-being best practices is to surround yourself with people that support you in making healthy choices. This sounding board can also serve that purpose. So really important to let them know like what you're looking for from them and encourage them to hold you accountable in those different ways. So the MOI is one way to continue to explore and continue to look at what those values and those passions are, right? Those other parts of that purpose formula. You might be thinking you're not ready to commit to this statement yet, and you're partially right in doing that because we haven't had time yet to explore those other two options, and that is a big part of the Purpose MOI curriculum. I want to encourage you to share this again with your sounding board or with other folks in your family or other people that you work closely with. Maybe if you have one other guy in the office like Eric, you might want to share that with him so that he knows. There are lots of great books to read. I showed you 3 today that you can look at if you're interested in further exploring these topics. But all of those are really quite fabulous. And I'll be sending out a link to a video that Dr. Richard Leiter presentation that he did just a few weeks ago during this pandemic time about purpose that Dana and Holly can share out with all of you to just kind of do a little follow-up and other exploration. So I encourage you to just pick a few things that you're willing to do, whether that's reaching out to your sounding board, watching a book, reading a book, or watching a film. There's some resources in the back of your workbook. Consider joining that Purpose MOI, and look for ways that you can find to integrate your purpose into either your job or maybe in your workplace, at your church, in your community, in your neighborhood, however you want to do that. So I am going to invite you to, on page 9, write down what your commitment is to continue doing that. And on page 10, that's going to be your own follow-up homework and activity. And after you're done with that, I'm just going to close with a quote, and then we'll see if anyone is interested in that Purpose MOI concept. So just take a moment to fill out page 9. So folks, we're actually a little over time, so we filled the full 2 hours, and I appreciate you so much taking the time to do this exploration opportunity with us, to spend some time focusing on your own well-being and knowing that this is a part of that. If I want to get a show of hands from folks, is there anyone that would be interested, if we were able to set it up, to do a virtual Purpose MOI? Just show a little show of hands. Jeannie, awesome. Okay, well, how about we'll give you some time to think about it, and if you are interested, oh, Carrie also, great. Maybe Dana, would you be willing to kind of be the liaison for that if they can, sure. Can they let you know? Okay, and then sure. We can try to set something up if we have enough people. Typically, it's good to have a minimum of 5 people participating. So if Carrie and Jeannie, if you're able to rally a few other folks that were on the workshop today, that might be a good way to do it. And of course, there's always opportunities in the future. So I'm going to close with 2 quotes, actually. And I just want to thank you for your time, and also let you know that there will be a survey coming out. Dana is going to be sending that out to hear about how you enjoyed your experience, and if this was positive, if you would recommend it to others. All right, so here's a closing quote here. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live it, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. As long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle for me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make sure it burns as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. And here's another one. Every day, focus on your purpose. Remember why you do what you do. We don't get burned out because of what we are doing, but because we forget why we are doing it. Thank you all. It was wonderful to see your faces, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, Juliet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.